Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show, Your Decision 2018. Today is part 1 and part 2 of our special series on Amendment 73, New Funding for K-12 Education. My guests include Martha Olson, who is a proponent of the measure. In fact, Martha, you were involved with the whole signature gathering process, I hear, as well.
Yes, I was.
And you have a long history in education.
I do, and it's something I feel really passionate about, and it's something I think as Coloradans we need to reinvest in our schools. We have the top economy in the country, and at the same time, over the last 8 years since the Great Recession, we've taken $7 billion or more out of our children's schools. And we have to stop cheating our kids from a good education. We have to stop cheating our state from having a well-educated, well-qualified workforce. And so what Amendment 73 aims to do is to provide funding for our schools that would enable us to pay our teachers more money so we can solve the huge teacher crisis that we have, the shortage of teachers. It would allow us to provide full-day kindergarten to our children across the state. It would give school districts across the state the ability to decide how to best spend the funds for their particular district instead of waiting for Denver to tell them what to do. And it would begin to bring our state up to par with the rest of the country in terms of what we invest in education.
All right. And Kathy Kipp, you were president of the Poudre School District.
Yes, and I still serve on the school board, yes.
Still on the board?
Yes, I've been serving on that board for the past 7 years. I come to it from the mom route. I was that person, who was always that PTO president or whatever in the schools. And eventually when my kids were in the 8th grade, they said, well, would you be willing to run for school board? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess it's time. So that's why it brought me here, and I've been very involved in doing education advocacy ever since, because we, as Martha says, continue to fall behind the rest of the country in how we fund our schools and our education for our kids.
All right, great. And Michael Fields from Colorado Rising Action, you're the executive director. Tell me quickly about Rising Action and your short take on Amendment 73.
Sure. So Colorado Rising Action, we are a 501c4 group educating Coloradans about different policy proposals, and this is one of them. I was the former state director for Americans for Prosperity, and I am the governing board president at a charter school in Aurora, a former teacher there too. So education runs in my family, and glad to be talking about this issue. One thing is, it's really good that we have Tabor in this state because it allows us, all as citizens, to have a say on if taxes are increased or not. And Amendment 73 is a big proposal. It's a big ask, $1.6 billion ask. And the problem that I have with it is there aren't guaranteed outcomes in this, right? So, is student achievement going to go up because of this? We don't know. We do know that this will impact the economy. We have the #1 economy in the country. We want to keep it that way. And so, this is something that we look at the education funding in general. Education funding has been going up. Teacher pay has been going down during that same period of time. So I think people want to fix the structural problems with our education system before increasing any kind of taxes.
All right, and I really am interested in that challenge too, in terms of knowing, will the money go to actually increase the pay for teachers? Because I think it's almost unanimous. Everybody agrees teachers need to be compensated at a much higher level. So where will the money go? And I think a lot of parents, a lot of voters are concerned about the skyrocketing costs of administration in our schools. And if you go to any school, and if you've been involved and I know you were talking both Martha and Kathy about your backgrounds in education. If you walked into a school today compared to walking into that same school 20 years ago, you've got a lot more administrative staff. And so really one of the questions is, how do we address it? I'd be really interested in people's take on that. And last but not least, former state senator Norma Anderson. Norma, great to have you on the show again.
I spent 19 years in the legislative body. I chaired education for 4 years. I carried the School Finance Act of '94. Tom Norton and I chaired the committee that had a study done first. We looked at all aspects before we passed a bill. And that's a big problem I have with this amendment, Amendment 73. Where is the research? How does it fit into the state budget? It doesn't, quite frankly. Why create another education fund when we have one and you could add to it? And it does not do a thing except, sure, it's wonderful to support all-day kindergarten. I love that. I like preschool. Currently, I'm working on a 2- and 3-year-old home visitation program to teach them their words and their letters and their colors and what have you. It's as a volunteer. And so I'm a strong proponent of education, but this amendment is not the answer. It does the wrong things.
All right, so let's talk about the amendment specifically. And I don't know if you know it makes sense, Martha, for you to describe some of the specifics of what it will do. But talk about it in terms of what taxes will be raised, what taxes will be frozen, what taxes will be decreased, et cetera. If you can give us a quick summary of that.
Sure. I think, first to put it just in context, we're working our schools in Colorado from the School Finance Act that was passed in 1994. And I think everyone will admit that the world has changed quite a bit since then. And we have to figure out a better way to make sure that our school resources are distributed so that they're adequate and they're distributed in an equitable manner for all children across the state. The Amendment 73 would raise $1.6 billion. It's a big number, but that amount of money will only bring us up to below average in terms of school funding across the country. It would do so by means of a small incremental tax on 8% of Coloradans. 92% of Coloradans, those earning under $150,000 a year net income, would not have any tax increase at all.
So if your taxable income is 150 or less, or if your adjusted gross income is 150?
Your taxable income
If
is
your taxable
$150,000.
income is 150 or less, you're not affected.
You're not affected at all.
If your taxable income is over 150,000, there's a graduated increase.
There's a graduated increase, with the top increase being at $500,000. You know, Colorado is a very low tax state. We have a flat tax rate for everybody, but what ends up happening with a flat tax rate, by the time you add in everybody, you know, all the sales tax and property taxes, people in the lowest income brackets in the state end up paying a disproportionate amount of their money for taxes compared to the people that are earning the most. So we've tried to restructure this so that it's a fair and equitable burden to bear for people across the state. So this money would go into special education fund that would supplement the money that the legislature is currently granting to schools across the state from the general fund. The general fund, because of Tabor, can't keep growing to meet the demanding needs of Coloradans, so we have to figure out a way to supplement that, and this tax increase will do that. At the same time, we would lower property taxes, because that's what the local share comes from, to 7% for residential assessment rates and 24% for everybody else.
Like commercial.
Like commercial, ranchers, farmers, people that have been most impacted by, you know, property tax issues over the last number of years. So that we're stabilizing the local share, because what's happening now is, because of Gallagher, the local share keeps getting ratcheted down, and the state has to make up for it for the school financing. And the state can't do that because it has a limited pot because of Tabor. So what Amendment 73 aims to do is, in a fair and equitable way, raise more money and at the same time plug the hole in the bucket, so that our school financing and local share can be stabilized. And that way we can begin to build the schools. And what's also really important to note is that when this new money is distributed, it will go to the local school districts who know exactly how they want to spend the money. And we have up on our website how much each local school district will get, and you know, people have control at the local level over what that money is going to be.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, but we'll come back, and I want to get some responses. One of the things I want to make sure people know, when you refer to Gallagher, you're talking about a constitutional amendment, the Gallagher Amendment, actually named after your former Senate colleague, Dennis Gallagher, of course, which actually creates a ratio between commercial and residential property And because of that ratio, and because it's fixed in the Constitution, residential rates, in terms of the percentage, keep going down. Commercial rates keep going up.
That's not entirely true, because that would not have happened until Tabor passed. And that's what pushed it down, because there was one time we were supposed to raise that assessment rate to 10% and couldn't because of Tabor. So
Right, it's a
worked better.
combination, right.
Yeah.
If I could just say, the other thing that's really important to note is that it's just the education side. There's really two chunks of property taxes. There's the education portion and the non-education portion. The Gallagher that we're looking to affect with Amendment 73 will only affect the education portion.
Right, which generally in most jurisdictions, though, is the largest portion of your real estate taxes. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with our panel in just a moment.
There's more of the Aaron Harber Show after this.
When Governor Hickenlooper was asked about this last week or the week before, he basically said that these kind of tax increases are a big ask, and when you raise taxes on people that are wealthy, then they could leave the state, they could go somewhere else. That could have a big impact on our economy, and so even he, was a little bit concerned about, how this would impact our economy.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harper Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part one of our special two-part series on Amendment 73 that will be on your ballot. That is concerning new funding for public education, K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade. So, Michael, give me some comments on what you just heard.
Well, I think one big thing is that the notion that this will only impact 8% of Coloradans is not true. The fact that the corporate tax rate is going to go up 30%, that small businesses are going to get hit by this, that consumers are going to end up feeling the burden of it. So to say that this is just something that will impact the wealthy is not true. But also, Governor.
So let's go to that specifically. So what Martha was talking about was the increase in the state income tax on individuals. How would the corporate tax rate be affected?
So that goes up 30%. So it's on the state level.
From what to what?
So it's at the 4.63% right now, and it goes up 1.37% additionally. So that is over 29%.
Is it 1.37 or 1.7?
I think it's 1.37.
It goes up to 6%, but really that takes us from the third lowest corporate taxes in the country to the ninth lowest corporate taxes in the country for the states that have property taxes.
And it's just for the
Or
C corporations.
For corporate
Just
taxes.
C corporations.
Yeah,
It's
so
not
the only
small businesses.
really big ones, not for S corps or anything.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that when I read it.
It's there.
Well, it wouldn't. S corporations don't pay income taxes anyway. The S corporation flows to the individual or the entity
That's the
and that would-
problem.
And in terms of actually, most C corporations are small corporations. They're not. So I wouldn't tell people that it only affects large corporations. I would guess that well over half of corporations are relatively small corporations. In fact, I'd be willing to bet a large sum of money on
I
that.
would too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say too that when Governor Hickenlooper was asked about this last week or the week before, he basically said that these kind of tax increases are a big ask, and when you raise taxes on people that are wealthy, then they could leave the state, they could go somewhere else, that could have a big impact on our economy. And so even he was a little bit concerned about how this would impact our economy. I also think though that
Well, let me stop you there. I got to tell you, I don't think anybody of the multimillionaires or billionaires that I know are going to leave the state because of this increase. They'd be unhappy about it. But from a public policy perspective, I wouldn't tell people that folks are going to go to Canada or Wyoming or whatever.
Well, I would disagree somewhat in that I grew up in Illinois, and when they increased taxes and the neighboring states, Wisconsin and Illinois, decided to lower them, there was a big economic impact, and they're still feeling that right now. So I do think that it is
Well, Illinois is a
plausible.
mess for other reasons, including their pension, their 11 trillion or I don't know what.
Sure,
it's-
and we can get into the pension issue
I think
here
it's-
too.
Yeah,
But
and we should. But again, I think I just want, in my personal opinion, anybody who says that 1.7% corporate tax increase is going to result in millionaires fleeing the state, I wouldn't use that argument. I think you have better. I think you have better argument.
But the 78% tax increase on 500,000 and above is a big impact. It's almost 4% difference there. So I think that's the part where you could see people leaving the state for that. But I think on the education side, it's important. Where is this money going towards? $150 million went in above inflation this last year for education, was put into that. And if that money we can guess on this, but do you think that every teacher, all 50,000 teachers in Colorado, are going to get a $3,000 increase to their salary? I don't think so. The problem that we have is 53% of the money that we spend on education does not go to goes to instruction. Only 53% goes to instruction.
And where does the other 47% go?
That's a great question. I mean, we talk about a pension issue. We talk about the debt that we're paying in certain states or certain districts for buildings, et cetera. Administrative costs. We can get into administrative costs, but we have higher administrative costs here in Colorado than we do the average in the nation, and I think that number is too high too.
So that's a really interesting issue. And by the way, that 47% includes administration, but also includes support services, which to some extent are fungible with in class instruction if a teacher's getting support. But it does include administrative, and PARA is certainly, the Public Employees Retirement Association, is a huge bite of where dollars go. So when taxpayers, Kathy and Martha, I'd be really interested. When taxpayers say, we want to pay teachers more, but we see so much of our tax dollars going to purposes not in the classroom per se. And actually, I'm going to jump the other side of the fence. You could argue that PARA is kind of an in-classroom expense because it's going ultimately, we hope, to the teachers. But certainly, if you go back to support services, administration, overhead, that's not the case. So how do we address that, number one? And number two, I think you talked about the money, we're believers in local control. The money's going to go to each school district. But that doesn't answer the question of what do we do about administrative overhead? How do we rein that in, or should we not rein it in?
Well, I think first we have to look at how many unfunded mandates have been given to the schools over the last 20, 30 years. There's been no new money to meet any of the new requirements, but the requirements of accountability, just kind of go on, and that costs money. It takes somebody's time to respond to all of those demands.
But that's well, hold on.
Yeah.
I agree with unfunded mandates are certainly a key issue, but there are different ways to respond to them, and one way is to respond minimally to them, and to not necessarily hire staff that are going to generate 100-page reports. And I've got to tell you, I've been involved in education from my days as a student at Fairview High School in Boulder, on through being a trustee at Princeton University. And I've got to tell you, I know that we have a tremendous number of administrators, great people, who I don't think we need, compared to needing those resources in the classroom.
Then you need to address that with your local school board. Hello, that's what local school board's elected for, and that's why this is such a great amendment, is because all of the monies will be spent at the local level. I'll tell you, up in my district, in Purdue School District, we have about 2% of our budget that's spent on administrative overhead. Now, it might be different elsewhere in the state. get it under control. It's so much easier to deal with it at a school board level and at a school district level than it is when you're trying to go to the legislature and tell them to dictate what local districts should do.
Okay, but that's backwards. That's backwards, because what you're saying is give us the money and then talk to your school board about how to use it. I'm just saying from a taxpayer's perspective, I think what taxpayers are saying, and I think the problem you run into, and I question that 2% figure, by the way, and we'll check that. But I think what taxpayers are saying is show us how the money is going to go to teachers first, and then we'll approve this. But if you're saying give you a blank check and we're going to depend on 176 or whatever is school districts to make the right decision, I don't think taxpayers are going to buy that.
You know, you can get into statistics. You can make them say anything you want. He can be talking about one thing with administrative costs. I can be talking about another thing. So really, you can't go there unless you dig into the weeds. And I really don't want to dig into.
Well, I have dug into the weeds. And hold on. And if you look at the, if you go to the statistics, there are very basic breakdowns between in Colorado and for all 50 states of how much money goes into in-class instruction and how much money goes everywhere else. And in Colorado, only a slim majority of our dollars go to in-class. And so I guess what I'm saying is all of us want teachers to be paid more. But we need to come up with a mechanism that says if we're going to spend $1.6 billion of taxpayer money, let's make sure it goes to teachers.
There's in our proposal, there is not only do we specify, that there should be a new school financing formula developed that is adequate and equitable for our students, no matter what zip code or district they live in. But it also requires the legislature to come back in 5 years and say, okay, now let's see, how has our achievement improved? There's no one silver bullet, and no one school district is going to spend their money the same way. Colorado has 178 school districts, and if we're looking at administrative costs, but you can't consolidate those school districts because kids are traveling more than an hour, 2 hours away to school. So each district is going to have to look at its expenses in a different way. But across the state, people are saying, it's not fair to have to pay for full-day kindergarten. It's not fair that our kids have 40 students in the class. We need a new science.
Okay, so we'll address those. I want to give you all a chance to respond. I'm way over time again. That's my fault. We'll be right back after this break to wrap up.
There's more of the Aaron Harber Show after this.
They're hurting library districts, all of those things.
All right.
That's actually not true because we only affect the education side of the Gallagher Amendment. We don't affect the other side.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our final segment in part one of our special two-part series on Amendment 73. Okay, Norma, you've been quiet, but not for want of trying, I know.
You're
My
right.
apologies.
Thank you. There's so many things that have been said wrong. The 94 Act has been changed tremendously by legislators, putting in different things. I've talked to the legal services that write these things, and they tell me that. So I don't have to read it and live with it. I know, because I know what was in the original. The superintendents carried a bill last year, and it was killed. But they studied, and it was a good bill.
We also have Amendment 23. And we haven't
Well, that's in the Constitution, too,
Right.
with all the mandates. But also in Tabor, it says you can get rid of mandates. You don't have to accept them. But everybody forgets that little piece in
In
Tabor.
terms of getting rid of them,
You don't have to accept them.
and from the state.
Right.
Obviously, you can't do any, if there's a
No,
federal mandate,
you have
you can't
to.
overwrite that.
But then, and let me go to one of the arguments that on the business, the tax, small business are generally making over the 500, and they pay that tax personally. They do not pay it as a corporation. So it's an entirely, I mean, you really hurt small business in this bill terribly. And there's one other thing.
Okay, now why? Well, if you're a regular corporation, you're paying taxes on your profit. So if you're making a profit of over $500,000, and you have to give another 1.37%, you're talking about what? $6,500?
It's a personal tax.
Well, either
You
way,
pay
if
it
your
personal.
profit's $500,000, I'm not that sympathetic to someone having to pay, $6,500 out of a profit of $500,000. That's not going to drive. That's not going to kill any business. Do people like us in business like paying more taxes? No. Do we try to pass them on to our customers? Yes, but that's not going to. I think there are very few businesses that'd be.
Well, there's one other big problem with their property tax. They talk about how wonderful it is to lower it. When they lower that business property tax, they're hurting all their fire departments. They're hurting because they get only property tax. They're hurting library districts, all of those things.
All right.
That's actually not true because we only affect the education side of the Gallagher Amendment. We don't affect the other side. So it's not going to impact those. And that's what the legislative impact statement has also agreed with on.
So the rate wouldn't affect non-education
Right,
services.
and she's absolutely right. We do need to fix Gallagher and that continuous ratchet down rate. Those other districts are being hurt terribly, but this amendment will not hurt
Okay,
them
one of the
further.
things I want to just emphasize too, and I know we're about to end the show, is a key point that you made, Martha, I don't want people to overlook, and that is there are many school districts that are really very poor, that are in counties that don't have high property values, and these school districts are suffering. They have literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of maintenance, of deferred maintenance in buildings. It's difficult to attract teachers in terms of the salaries they can pay. That's something we really do need to address, and we'll do that in part two. So that's the end of part one. Please join us for part two. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.